All right, guys, welcome back to the show of How I Talk. We are on episode 4, and episode 4 is going to be about censorship. So we're super excited to get into this discussion today. If you don't already know, I'm your host, Chris Jones.
And Tim Jones here. I'm coming to you guys live from space. If you can see me now, I am floating in space. Hey guys, I'm excited to be back with you guys again. Hey, we got a special guest, right, Chris? We got a special guest.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We have Nathan Jones here on the call with us today to discuss in-depth detail on this podcast. And, he's my uncle. So, can you kind of just let everybody know a little bit about
Which
yourself?
means he's probably my brother. If he's your uncle, which means he's probably my brother. So, more than likely, we got something to say here today about censorship. I brought him on because, he's supposed to have some credentials, guys. So I want you to hear, he's supposed to have some credentials. We'll find out in a minute. And you guys let us know. Hey, you can always subscribe to our podcast, How I Talk. Check us out on the podcast. Download it, put it on your phone, subscribe, and also, hey, like us, share us, and then put a review.
All right.
All right, welcome everyone. My name is Nathan Jones. Just a quick rundown. I've been in the IT industry roughly 20 plus years at this point. I specialize in cloud services, cybersecurity. In my free time, I like to really look at technology and how it intersects with public policy, specifically around issues of privacy and how we seem to be slowly giving up our privacy as technology integrates further and further into our lives. With that, from an educational standpoint, industry standpoint, I have several industry certifications that line up in the cybersecurity and cloud fields across multiple cloud vendors, as well as MBA and a master's in information assurance.
Come on, just get to it. We all
we
heard
can
all
have
this
this
stuff before.
conversation.
Guys, I don't know if he's making this stuff up or what, guys. Hey, but that's okay. That's okay. We're gonna get ready to go.
He just mad because I'm the smartest person in the room.
That's okay. I'm tired of all these accolades.
All right. So I appreciate that, Unc. Of course, you guys out there listening today, we are talking about censorship, different levels of censorship. We're going to just dive into it. And for people who don't know what censorship is, I'm going to just run you guys down a quick definition of it. And then from there, we'll discuss whether people agree with it or disagree with it. You definitely want to hear these thoughts. So what is censorship? It's a suppression of speech, public communication, or other information on the basis that such material is considered objectionable, harmful, sensitive, or inconvenient. Censorship can be conducted by governments, private institutions, and other controlling bodies. So that's just a quick summary of what censorship is. But let's go ahead and get this thing rolling. I'll start with you, Unc. What do you think about censorship? Any level of it, do you agree, disagree? What do you think needs to happen moving forward?
Well, censorship, depending on which aspect of the conversation you want to go to, is a necessary evil in any society. As it relates to the internet.
Hey, if it's a necessary evil, does that mean that it impedes upon our free speech?
No, because it has to be a governmental entity that enforces the censorship to impede upon free speech.
They were asking Zuckerberg to do it.
No, Zuckerberg is a private company. You have to, okay, let's make sure we set some ground rules.
Set them.
One, free speech is only from a constitutional standpoint in America, referring to the government placing restrictions on your ability to say what you would like. It has nothing to do with private industry. So let's make sure we understand what the ground rules are. So Zuckerberg, Facebook, Twitter, they are separate. They're technically, from a legal standpoint, cannot impose on your free speech.
Who, Facebook, you're saying?
Yes. They can censor you, but they're not imposing on your free speech because they are a private entity.
If Facebook, you're saying Facebook can impose upon your free speech, then why did Congress, Nancy Pelosi, and the rest of those guys try to push Zuckerberg to then censor what was going on Facebook?
But those are two different things. One is
censorship.
Matter of fact, hold on.
No. They said Zuckerberg.
You're asking two different.
Wait a minute. Listen. They said Zuckerberg should pay a price for what he's doing into our democracy.
Hold on, because you are conflating two different lines of conversation.
Okay.
The government can impede on your free speech. That's what the Constitution says. No government, we cannot, you have freedom of speech to protest your government, so on and so forth. So you have free speech under the government. Now, censorship, what the government is saying, Facebook is self-selecting what they choose to allow on their platform. And do they have a right to do that? They have a right to do that. Unless there is a law or a regulation that says they cannot as a private entity, they have a right to do that. Now, we can make the argument about whether or not Facebook, Twitter, Google, access to internet, those companies and organizations that provide a pipeline should be treated as technically private entities or utility because of the functionality. But they are private entities right now.
Yeah, but I understand the private entity. But we also have to look at Representative Adam Schiff. Now, you know what? He sent a message to all these guys, to the executive of Google, Twitter, and YouTube. And you know what he demanded? Censorship. And he said of anything that he deemed misinformation and false information. Now,
And
the problem with that is that who is the determining factor of what's misinformation and who's the determining factor of what's false information?
Well,
who makes that decision? So they were saying they're going to make that decision.
Well,
and this is where I'm saying there's a problem with it. There's a problem with trying to censor stuff.
That's where you're getting into whether or not the government should pass regulations in terms of how information is leveraged online. That's not necessarily a private industry conversation. That's why he could not just tell Facebook to do X. He said he wants Facebook to do X because right now there's no laws or regulations around how Facebook handles data. Now, this goes into what we were saying the other day, where we were just having this conversation about the value of data. You have to remember, Facebook, Twitter, they don't produce anything. They take data and they analyze that data and they aggregate that information and produce something from that information. And it's that productization to commoditize information that is the problem right now.
Okay. So
the government is not impeding on your government is not impeding on your free speech.
Well, if
you can say whatever you want to.
But they're telling you can't allow it on your platforms.
Your argument is about the platform. If their government's
not impeding, then why did they shut Trump down? You
well,
can't
they shut Trump. Wait, hold on. The government never shut Trump down.
I didn't say the government, but the
Facebook shut Trump down because Facebook sets the rules on what can be said on their private platform. Just like no shoes, no shirt, no service. You cannot walk into a restaurant with no shoes, no shirt, no service. Facebook sets the rules on what is allowed on their platform. Trump violated those rules and they shut him down.
Hold on. Let me ask this. Are you saying you agree with what Facebook decided to do by shutting Trump down?
I didn't say I agree with it. I said they have the freedom to because they are a private entity.
Now, let me ask you this.
I think those organizations are utilities at this point, and they should not be treated as private entities. They need to be treated as some type of hybrid because so many organizations now only put information online, either on a Facebook page or through a tweet, that you need that information in order to have security, in order to evacuate, all these different forms of it. So I think at this point, those companies should be treated more like a utility.
Okay, so you're just saying that they are basically something we can use to get our messages out there.
Correct.
Okay, and so if we can use those as ways to get our message out there, then that means anybody can put out any message they want.
They could, as long as they allow it on the platform. But you see where censorship comes in.
You're breaking up.
Where censorship comes in line is even if you have a radio station, right?
Hey, can you repeat that? You broke up a little bit.
No, I think that's you. Even if you have a radio station, when you go and you apply for a license for that radio station, you are having to conform to specific rules in order to get your license. Exactly, those regulatory rules.
Yeah.
The same thing applies when you want to go on Facebook. You're going on to Facebook and you're having to comply with their rules of what can be said, when it can be said, and how it can be said. in order to leverage their platform. There's nothing that keeps you from going to another internet platform or creating your own internet platform and still saying whatever you like.
Let me interject right here and let me say that that's an interesting point that you make. Have you gotten a chance to see Social Dilemma
I have.
on Netflix? What are your thoughts on that?
They make some very good points. And that's what they're discussing there is not censorship. What they're discussing there is primarily about the algorithms these companies use and how those algorithms are dangerous in terms of the radicalizing someone because you are eventually limiting the sources of information, or let me rephrase that, you're limiting different opinions about information based on those algorithms. So when we productize information, what happens is that you'll go onto a Facebook or Google and you'll do a search. We'll say you search on Donald Trump election. You get back three sources that say the election was stolen. Well, you click on one of those links. Well, the algorithm says you like this. So therefore, I will send you more of it. So it's like clicking on a link that says Nike. Now, the next time you go back, instead of showing you 3 Nike shoes, 3 Reeboks, or 3 not Air Force Ones, but 3 and 1s, you end up seeing 12 Nike shoes and nothing else. Then the next time you click, you end up seeing 24 or 48 pairs of Nikes. Same thing with these types of algorithms. When you click once, you see 3. When you click again, you see 9, so on and so forth.
So you said something interesting though, that on these platforms that yes, they may censor you, but if you would like to say your own opinion or speech, you can go create your own platform. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Absolutely. Now, I agree with you. I think that's something that's easier said than done, because most people are going to be on your Facebook, Google, Instagram. Everyday people are going to probably be on those platforms. And because of what you're saying, the algorithms, it's like dopamine. You just come back to it and get that high every single
Yeah.
time. And it's hard to get yourself off of those platforms. I know it sounds good to go create a platform, but most 95% of people probably not going to do that. And they're going to stay on the platforms. And what happens with those platforms is then I see the censorship being controlled because Facebook, Google, Instagram gets to determine what news you get. And truthfully, if you look at my age group, my demographics of people, they're going to get their information from Facebook, Google, Instagram. They're not going to CNN.
Facebook has actually done social experiments to see if they can influence, and they can. So it is a serious issue that these companies have that much power, but they have this much power because people have volunteered to opt into their platforms.
Right.
So without information, Facebook would be, I mean, I hate to say it, but without people, Facebook is nothing because their product is the information that you provide.
Right.
As they say, if it's free, then you're the product.
Right. But see, the thing is, though, is Facebook is getting pressure from the government to do censorship and to take down what they say misinformation. So then they're telling Facebook, the government is telling Facebook, you have to remove certain things.
Well, the government is saying you have to remove misinformation now, but the government has not defined what is considered misinformation. So when the government start putting their finger on the scale and saying this is considered misinformation, I think we'll have a problem. But the government is saying that if you cannot validate, we have to separate opinion from fact. And what the problem is, you have people who are presenting opinions on these platforms as factual information.
Right.
Now they presented, I agree.
Opinion, though. Extreme opinion.
Well, extreme opinion, yes.
But
opinion is opinion.
There's nothing wrong with having an opinion.
That is correct. And what you also
so that's what I'm saying. If there's nothing wrong with having your opinion, and your opinion may be extreme, then you should be able to have your opinion.
But what you're also seeing,
and if your opinion is misinformation, your opinion is not validated, it shouldn't be on Facebook to validate. It should be on you, the user.
It should not be.
You, the user, should know better.
We have to change how we view Facebook and these other platforms. In terms of whether or not something is extreme, there's a concept out there called the Overton window, I believe is what it's called.
What's
And
called what?
basically, the Overton window. And basically what it says is if you look at opinions and views, it's viewed on a spectrum. And inside of that spectrum, there's a window that society deems something to be acceptable in. And as you move over time, you go from something being unthinkable to accepted to commonplace. Interracial relationships on television, right?
Mm-hmm.
At one point, it was unthinkable. Then it became more
Right.
acceptable. And now we see them on everywhere on TV, on commercials, the Cheerios commercial. They're everywhere now.
The same with gay relationships.
Exactly. So it's a thing called the Overton window
Okay.
and it discusses that sliding scale in which society views something as being acceptable. So what you're discussing, Tim, is really more of societal censorship, where an opinion is outside the social norm, and therefore it's censored by society
Now
by saying it's extreme.
That may be true. Society does its own censorship. I agree with that. However, what I'm saying is that if you're able, if Facebook decides not to put certain things on the platform because Facebook or the government is saying we don't like it or we disagree or we think it's misinformation, well, I don't think it's their duty to do that. I think that
Facebook doesn't allow child porn on their platform.
Well, I agree with that. There's some things I think in society says this is wrong. And I think society is saying
misinformation is wrong because misinformation can drive people to radicalize, which can drive people to violence. The same way that we talk about Muslim extremists, that misinformation can drive them to ultimately committing a violent act. And that's the problem right now, is that misinformation about saying that with Trump specifically, someone stole something from Trump, someone took something from Trump, someone illegally defeated Trump. It moves people to being radicalized against the system, and that becomes dangerous at some point.
So then you would say that misinformation that's out there about he lose the election, they stole it from me, then that would create this radicalization that we see storming the White House based on that information.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Called insurrections and things like that.
Yes. Yes. It's not the opinion that you have, but you're not stating an opinion. You're not saying, I believe. You're saying factually this happened. And you get people to start believing that factually this happened. And then you combine that with the algorithm that pushes you further into a silo in which people are a funnel, more like a funnel, that information becomes smaller and smaller and your social circle becomes smaller and smaller.
Well, then I see another issue though, Nathan. If it's going into this funnel that's being siloed by Facebook or Google or Twitter because they want specific information, if that's the case, then it should be on them. We should go back to Facebook, Twitter, and say, hey, don't silo the information. Allow it to be out there, but you're trying to go down and get certain people.
Well, and that's what movies like The Social Dilemma that we mentioned earlier, that's what those movies are discussing. They're discussing how these algorithms work and how the algorithms have been turned from being tools leveraged by the people to being almost anti-free speech, where they've been turned against the people because I'm using those algorithms to predict what you like. I'm no longer allowing you to opt in onto a story. I'm sending you stories. So I'm feeding you information.
Yeah, you're feeding me now instead of allowing me to find
regulation. But there has to be regulation, I feel that, from the government, because if you look on the other side, when you're looking again at these social media or platforms, a lot of people are getting, again, their information from it, which means they're probably getting a lot of false information. You can put you can manipulate words.
And there needs to be regulations, but we need to, from a governmental standpoint, we need to be thinking about how we regulate. Right now, government is looking at Facebook. You hear by Elizabeth Warren and some of the others that are out there looking at Facebook from the terms of size. Size really means very little in this context. We really need to be looking at Facebook from the terms of the technology platforms.
So you don't care about monopoly. When you say size, monopoly doesn't matter to you at all.
Because Facebook is really, their size is really only by people giving them information. Facebook's size is determined by the people, not by a product that they produce.
Okay.
So they don't necessarily own an industry. They
What
own
about
an
Amazon?
industry as long as people continue to give them information. Well, Amazon is a different creature. Amazon actually produces a logistic arm that provide products and services for companies. So they are a platform that has something tangible. But even if you look at Amazon, they're going to have struggles with Walmart in the future, because Walmart is building up their online delivery platform, their online logistics. They're going after the same market space that Amazon is in, with Walmart fulfillment, where you can sell products on Walmart. Walmart would take all of the back end for fulfillment services, the same way Amazon does with some of their business lines. So Walmart is really coming after Amazon in that context.
Well, let me say this about Amazon. Hold on. Let me say this about Amazon. Amazon, you said that, they have a tangible product, but Amazon is still playing a part in censorship. Right now, what they're doing with books is they're banning certain books with objectionable content. So
that goes back to that Overton window, where it's society determining where that range is, that limit is. I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, I don't see that too much different than what the church did during the Dark Ages, the Inquisition, or what the Nazis did when they were burning books. So I'm hesitant to say I'm all right with you burning content in terms of books, or not burning, but banning content in terms of books, because people are self-selecting those items. As long as you're not feeding me more and more of the exact same type of information, I'm choosing what I want to read, then I'm self-selecting that. I don't have a problem with you self-selecting. I don't have a problem with you being racist and saying you're racist and you don't like Black people. I don't care about that.
I don't know about that, Nate, because in the sense that Walmart doesn't sell those books, or Walmart wouldn't allow you to sell how to create child pornography book. They wouldn't allow you to do one of those. I mean,
there's social norms, but what I'm talking about, I don't want you to say you want to censor anything in terms of something that's illegal, right? How to get away with going on the dark web and selling child pornography. I am talking about selling something where you can say, I believe that the U.S. government is bound for destruction, right? Well, that's anti-society, something against the government. I have a problem with you banning something like that, because that's someone's opinion, and they should be able to write.
Let's go back for a minute, because you mentioned something about if someone doesn't like, for example, Facebook, and they want to create their own, right, and say, hey, I want to be able to create my own platform and be able to speak from it, right? Yes. And the government, what I'm saying is the government won't even allow you to even do that.
Well, where I have
now, let me give you an example. Let me give you an example so you'll know where I'm coming from in my premise. Let's take Parler. What happened to Parler?
Now,
Parler is a prime example who created their own platform to do their own thing, and they were shut down. Matter of fact, they shut down.
But hold on, but I agree with that. But it wasn't Parler it was not the government that shut down Parler. It was Amazon refusing to let them leverage their platform, because they were a Amazon cloud service, right? So they were on Amazon's platform. Amazon kicked them off. I disagree with that, because again, that's where you're getting into, these companies are actually utilities, and I do not want those utilities determining whether or not I'm able to get onto the internet.
Well, now, see, that's they're determining whether or not and what gets on the internet. And so they could actually turn and do that to a church. They could say, I don't like the church message.
Exactly.
Guess what?
So I'm against that. I'm against that the same way I'm against companies like a telco saying they don't want net neutrality, where they can throttle different services because it may be coming from a platform that they don't have a partnership with, right? A content provider they don't have a part. I'm against that. So I'm for net neutrality, in the same way I don't want a Google or a Amazon determining what can be on the web.
But here's my point, is that you're censored in the fact that you can't even create anything. Nobody will let you use the big boys, let's say, because the big boys are in cahoots with the government, so they won't let you in on a platform to use your platform.
But you don't need the big boys. Now, let's be real about that conversation.
So why Parler is not online?
Because Parler wants a certain type of Parler wants to leverage this in order to be able to sue Amazon. To be honest, that's what they're looking to do, because they can find, and they should. But I'm just saying, they can go find another ISP, register their Parler DNS name, and be back online. That is quick to do.
Parler, they said they have about 15 million users. That's a lot. That's a lot. They have 15 million users. And you know what? I really never heard of Parler till they started talking about it on the news. And they were removed. I really never heard of it. And then all of a sudden, I'm reading and find out Parler's got that's a lot of users.
Yeah, but they also don't have regulations
and they're gonna even
on it
grow
either.
More.
Well, Parler didn't have any rules. That's one of the reasons why they're going upside down. I feel like they didn't have any regulations or rules because they're dealing with pornography on their site.
Well, Parler has very loose rules. I won't say they had no rules, but that's not. If you want to deal with the pornography aspect of Parler, I'm okay with that. But you can't say that if it's adult pornography, you can't be for censorship of that unless you want to say, okay, I want to be censorship of these other aspects of information. So the problem with people is they want to be able to censorship things they don't like. Freedom comes with the fact that people are able to have opinions that you may not care for.
Right.
And that's what American society has gotten away from, being willing to accept opinions that they don't like. There's a lady by the name of Loretta Ross. She's a professor. She had a statement. I was listening to it one day. She said what did she call it? The overstatement of harm. What you have is people getting on the internet and saying that your words and your opinion hurts me. Therefore, you're overstating the harm. She said it's an overstatement of harm. You never really develop the ability to deal with people that you don't like because you overstate the harm to the point where they are censored because people kick them off platforms. Because she's against cancel culture. The whole, if you say something I don't like getting, but she has a really good YouTube video on it. She has her own website, but she has some good opinions about it. But she has this thing where she discusses the overstatement of harm.
Because Apple removed Parler from the iPhone App Store.
That is correct.
So they removed them. I mean, so what they're doing to Parler is basically trying to say, you get out of here. We're not going to allow you to speak, talk, or anything.
My whole thing is this. My whole thing is this. Apple is okay. I'm okay with Apple removing them from the App Store. That's Apple's company. What I'm against is companies keeping them from being able to be online.
Yes, and the companies are doing that. They're keeping them from being able to be online.
You can download apps from someplace other than the App Store and put it on your phone. You just need to know how. The problem I have, as I said before, is not necessarily Apple saying, I don't want to carry your particular app, because they do that to hundreds of apps every day. You have to go through a process and get it in order to get to the App Store. So I'm okay with that piece because it's a private entity. What I'm not okay with is the entity making the decision about whether or not you can get online to present your argument.
Right. And right now, what they're doing to Parler is keeping them from being online.
Well, then, as I said earlier, they're not keeping Parler from being online. Parler does not want to go to another provider. They're positioning themselves to be able to sue Amazon because technically they had not done anything wrong to violate Amazon's policy. Amazon was just upset based on the insurrection and then applied their policies in a different way to Parler.
Parler's no different than all the other companies we've just been talking about, though, because Parler, once they get to a position where they get even bigger, even though they have quite a bit of followers, they still censorship right now. Yeah. So how are they really different?
I didn't say they were.
No, I'm just saying, like, they're no different, even though they're creating their own platform. The things we talked about, the steps you could take, they've done that and creating their own platform, but they still, to an extent, censorship. So they're really no different, are they?
Yeah, there's always a level of censorship. Let's just be honest. there's no absolute freedom. So I don't want anyone to think I'm up here basically saying I'm a free speech absolutist. I don't want anyone thinking that. There's always limits on free speech. I think private companies should be able to set that limit. But I think certain private companies, certain organizations need to be treated as utilities in our society simply because we have moved from a pencil, pen, writing, paper society to an information society where information is digitized.
Now, let me say this. CNN reported that Parler was trying to seek hosting alternatives besides Amazon. And they went to 6 different ones, and all of them turned them down.
Because they're unpopular in America right now.
Parler can't even find someone to even give them a hosting, because I'm telling you, Nate, this is censorship right here.
Hold on.
They're trying to keep Parler off the web.
Wait. Parler can go outside of the U.S. and be up in hours. When the U.S. Congress under Obama
But that's you're right. They could go, but they shouldn't have to.
I didn't say they should.
We're not a communist society. We're not a society that does that. They shouldn't.
I didn't say they should. I'm saying that they could, and I'm saying that companies. There's a gray area here where do you go from the standpoint of that gray area where you're saying it's not censorship, it's choice about who leverages my platform, to that it is censorship. And there's a gray area there, and we need rules to define what that gray area is going to look like. And right now, there's not any rules, and Parler is the victim of that lack of regulation. Right. We have to realize the age that we're in. We're in the information age, and we need laws that catch up with that. And right now, what we have is laws that were designed for a 20th century business environment trying to be applied to a 21st century business environment.
So it's outdated. But are you worried that, censorship could transition towards the likes of Cuba, China, Venezuela, how they have censorship on that level if we don't keep up with it?
I agree. I agree with him. It could.
We need to be careful because those places. Wait, hold on. Those countries are state-sponsored censorship, where the government itself is doing that censorship.
Yes, it
is. This is not. This is because we've always had regulatory censorship.
Wait a minute, the government's behind the scene on this. They're behind. They're just not in front.
Well, but the government. All I'm saying, we've always had regulatory censorship in America. Where we have to be careful about is comparing our censorship model in America with the censorship model that's in like China, where it is state-sponsored. So because I work in IT, exactly, I run into issues when we're having data that we need to either provide in China or bring out of China because of some of the laws that China has. We've had to do interesting things in order to be able to move data in and out of China because of those regulations that they have. Because the state says you can't say certain words, you can't do certain things, you can't come from a certain IP. Those are all things China has in place.
Gotcha.
So there's a lot to it, and there's multiple layers. And the problem is our current Congress is not thinking about it from that standpoint. I don't know who their technology advisors are, if they have any, but they really do need to have some technology advisors that really discuss not necessarily where technology is, because making laws for where technology is today does not solve the problem. You need to be looking at where technology is going tomorrow. I have a boss that used to say, what comes after what comes next? And that's where the laws really need to be looking at. What comes after what comes next?
Gotcha. Man, this has been good. This has been good.
Another thing that I'm also worried about is obviously with Biden and his administration. He's added, I don't know if you guys know, Goldman Sachs, Google. Who else has he added? There's been some other big tech companies that he's added on his administration team. Facebook has been one of them. You see that relationship, and I don't know how you guys feel about that related to censorship. Do you feel any correlation?
I think the relationship is
No,
good as long as they do not give them too much power in while they're at the table. I mean, Facebook, Google, they are smart. They saw what happened with the NRA, and they're doing the opposite. With the NRA basically took the position that any regulation was bad regulation. So they were never at the table helping to guide the regulation. Facebook, Google, they saw that and they're at the table trying to help guide the regulation. The only concern I would have is that Biden or the Biden administration would be over reliant on the industry professionals instead of getting independent professionals.
Gotcha. Tim, what do you think?
as far as
The relationship
which
that
part,
Biden has
the
with the
NRA?
administration. My question I said earlier about the administration
Yeah,
with Google.
my view on that is that I kind of agree with what Nathan said, but on the other hand, I think the government is pushing that relate. In other words, they're behind it. So they're behind all of these things that Facebook and the others do. So they're kind of pushing the censorship that they want to have, which is where I find the danger because whoever's in power will determine what's being said or done.
Well, I'm hoping that what we see are laws and not executive orders. From a political standpoint, I think under the Obama administration, although he had to, with the intrinsic nature of what Congress was, he did a lot of things through executive orders. What you saw in the Trump administration was the reversal of those executive orders, as well as the implementation of Trump's executive orders. And what you're currently seeing in the Biden administration is the reversal of the Trump executive orders. Those were basically what he signed the other day. So I think we need to be looking at our Congress and saying we need to pass laws that can be debated, can be discussed, that we can have ground rules that are not simply on the whim of the administration that comes into power.
I agree. Because each
Because I
administration
don't
can
think
do something different.
Exactly.
I don't think Biden's as big of a supporter for big tech as Barack was. If you remember from 08, 2016, he was a huge supporter of big tech.
But you
And that
also
pushed
have
a
to
lot of
look,
things.
well, you also have to look at Barack Obama was the first Gen Xer to come to the presidency. You're not going to find any Gen Xer that's not a proponent of technology. You can look at Pete Buttigieg and his campaign. You can look at the gentleman, Andrew, is it Chow? I can't think of his name. The one that was pushing the universal basic income. They all really leverage technology.
You said Andrew?
Is that Andrew Yang?
Yang.
Yang.
Yeah.
The universal basic income, all of them really leverage technology to get their message out. So you're not going to really find any Gen Xers that's going to be anti-technology. So, and I'm not anti-technology.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying that we need to be looking
and you're not
at,
Gen X either.
I am Gen X, actually.
Yeah, we see the gray hair.
Yeah. But I'm not anti-technology, but we need to be looking at updating our laws for our current environment. And we've done this in the past. We're just not doing it now.
Gotcha. Sounds good, man. It's been good. This conversation been really good. We appreciate having you, man.
Not a problem. I enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I hope you learned a lot today. You need to learn some things.
Yeah. Next time you need a lesson, just give me a call.
Well, yeah, we gave you some lessons. You're right. We gave you a lesson today. What you got to say, Chris?
Well, hey, that was the end of episode 4, Censorship. I hope you guys really like that out there. We're lucky to have my uncle, Nathan Jones, come on to the show and just share his thoughts and opinions.
My brother.
Yeah, and gotta throw that in there. Yeah, so I definitely appreciate you coming on here. And for you guys out there watching, of course, you can watch our show on podcast, YouTube, Facebook, all the above. And we'll definitely be looking forward to the next show. Shows are every Thursday, so check us out for episode 5 next week. Until then, guys, we'll see you.